My name is Rita Lynn, 31 years old. The sound of laughter and clinking wine glasses pressed against me like a wall as I stood in the corner of my parents' living room. The annual Lynn family Christmas party, 70 relatives, in a house built for 20. The air smelled of roasted duck ginger and the familiar tang of expensive perfume mixed with quiet judgment. I held a glass of warm cider that had long since lost its sparkle. My mother, Vivian Lynn, spotted me from across the room and beckoned with that sharp performative smile she reserved for family events. "Rita, come here, dear." Her tone wasn't a request. It was a command dressed as affection. I wove through clusters of cousins and uncles, careful not to spill a drop of cider. The chatter dimmed as I approached. Mom stood near the grand piano, her stage flanked by Aunt Sylvia, Uncle Raymond, and my brother Daniel, the golden son. "Rita," she said brightly, "tell everyone about your job at the hospital." The room quieted slightly. My stomach tightened. I'd been dreading this. "I work at Metropolitan Hospital," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "She's being modest," Mom chimed in the way she always did before the knife twisted. "She just answers phones there. Reception work, you know. But we're proud she's finally employed after all that schooling." A ripple of polite laughter floated around the group. Aunt Sylvia patted my arm. "At least it's honest work, dear. Not everyone can be as successful as your brother." Daniel grinned, holding his wine like a prop. "Still working at the front desk, sis, gotta admire that consistency." I forced a thin smile. "Something like that." He clapped me on the shoulder, hard enough to sting. "Hey, someone's gotta keep the doctors organized, right?" Mom's voice cut in again, sharp and gleaming. "We tell people she's in healthcare. It sounds better than receptionist. Though, honestly, after 7 years of education, we thought she'd amount to more." Aunt Sylvia gave a sympathetic little nod. "Children have such wild dreams. I remember when you said you wanted to be a brain surgeon, Rita. So cute." Daniel smirked. "Guess the brain part didn't work out, huh?" Laughter again, gentle but barbed. I'd heard this routine 100 times. They thought it was harmless teasing. To me, it was an echo chamber of every disappointment I'd stopped trying to correct. "I like healthcare," I said, quietly swirling my cider. "Answering phones isn't healthcare, sweetie," Mom corrected, smiling tightly. "It's administrative." I felt the vibration before I heard it faint rhythmic. My pager. I ignored it. Dad joined the circle, straightening his tie like he was entering a board meeting. "We offered her a position at our company's front office," he said. "Better pay more respect. But she insists on this hospital thing. You know how stubborn she can be." "Focused," I corrected softly. He didn't hear me, or pretended not to. The pager buzzed again, stronger this time. "So, Rita, my cousin Lila asked how much do hospital receptionists make?" "Around 30,000 a year." Daniel chuckled. "If she's lucky." Daniel, Mom scolded, but her eyes gleamed with pride. "Don't tease your sister." The pager wouldn't stop. Its vibration pulsed through my palm now, relentless. I slipped it from my purse and glanced down. Code Black, Presidential Trauma, Chief of Neurosurgery, required immediately. My blood ran cold. I set the glass down carefully on the buffet table next to a tray of untouched pineapple tarts. The chatter around me faded into static. "Rita," Mom said sharply, "we're talking to you." "I need to make a call," I said, already stepping away. "See," Daniel said loudly to the group. No focus, always drifting off. She probably forgot whose turn it is to refill the cider. Their laughter chased me down the hallway, but I didn't turn around. I slipped into the quiet of the front foyer, away from the perfume and the noise, and pressed the pager message into muscle memory. My phone was already at my ear before I reached the door. "Patel," I said the moment someone picked up. "Chief Lynn." My resident's voice trembled. "We have the chief of staff coming in with a ruptured cerebral aneurysm. Happened at a state dinner." "Secret Service is—" "I'm 20 minutes out," I interrupted. "Prep or one. Full security lockdown. Notify Dr. Martinez. She's cleared for presidential procedures." "Yes, Chief. The Secret Service is asking for you specifically." "Tell them I'm en route. Nobody touches the patient until I arrive." I ended the call. Behind me, Mom's voice cut through the silence. "Rita, what on earth are you doing out here?" I turned slowly. The entire family had drifted into the hallway now, curiosity pulling them like a tide. "I have to go," I said, simply slipping on my coat. Dad frowned. "Go where it's Christmas Eve." "An emergency," I said. Mom folded her arms. "They call you in for overtime now. That's ridiculous. Tell them to find another receptionist." My phone rang again. I didn't even have to look at the number. I answered Dr. Lynn. A pause. Then a crisp voice. "Chief Lynn. This is Special Agent Morrison with the Secret Service. We're verifying your ETA. The patient is being stabilized per your instructions." Confirm arrival in 13 minutes, I said. No one initiates any procedure until I'm scrubbed in. Understood. Yes, Chief. I ended the call. Silence fell like snow. Aunt Sylvia blinked. Did that man call you Chief? Mom's expression twitched, confusion tangled with disbelief. Who exactly are you talking to, Rita? I met her gaze evenly, the people waiting for me to save a life. Then I turned, opened the front door, and stepped out into the freezing night. As I reached my car, I could still hear Daniel's voice from inside, faint and incredulous. Why would the Secret Service call a receptionist? The door shut behind me. For the first time all evening, I smiled. Snow was falling in slow, heavy flakes. As I sped through the sleeping city, my tires cutting lines of silver across the wet asphalt. The streets were nearly empty, except for the flashing motorcade lights I could see faintly ahead, already blocking off the hospital entrance. The night outside felt eerily still. Inside my car, it was the opposite, my thoughts. A symphony of precision planning and buried emotion. Every turn of the wheel timed to the rhythm of my heartbeat. Every second shaved from the clock mattered. My hands were steady, but a tremor ran through me, not from fear, but from the sharp, familiar shift of stepping into who I truly was. By the time I reached Metropolitan Hospital, the drive that usually took 15 minutes had taken 11. The route was cleared by police. The moment I pulled into the executive parking area, a man in a dark suit approached, earpiece gleaming faintly under the garage light. Dr. Lin. Yes. Agent Morrison, Secret Service. Will escort you straight to surgical prep. The patient's en route. Vitals. Critical but stable for now. Aneurysm rupture confirmed. I followed him briskly through the restricted corridor. The echo of my heels on the tile was the only sound. I could smell disinfectant, sterile air, the faint hum of the hospital's pulse. Every sensor light flickered on as we passed cold white halos stretching endlessly ahead. He swiped us through a security door that led straight into the operating wing. My second-in-command, Dr. Martinez, was already waiting. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Chief, we've got the scans. It's bad anterior communicating artery massive subarachnoid hemorrhage. We're losing time. Prep or one, I said without hesitation. I want neuromonitoring, full anesthesia, standby, and vascular trays set. Alert neurophysiology and perfusion. She nodded sharply. Already done. As she hurried off, Agent Morrison kept pace beside me. Dr. Lin, you'll be the only one performing this procedure. Are you aware that... I'm aware, I cut in. Let my team do their job and keep all non-medical personnel outside OR boundaries. He hesitated. Understood. We reached the scrub room. I paused for a fraction of a second, just long enough to exhale and strip away everything that wasn't necessary, my family. Their words, the humiliation that still clung to me like smoke. Here, none of it existed. In this world, I wasn't the receptionist. I was the chief. The silence broke when Dr. Patel, one of my residents, rushed in with the preliminary CT scans. He looked pale. Chief, this is the worst rupture I've seen. The aneurysm's deep, irregular, massive blood pooling. Then we move fast, I said, studying the grayscale images. The shape of the rupture burned into my mind like a code only I could read. While I scrubbed in, I replayed each step, mentally: arterial access clip angle, suction technique, suture sequence. Surgery wasn't improvisation. It was choreography. And tonight, one wrong move could end a man's life and ignite a national scandal. As I disinfected, a fragment of sound intruded a memory uninvited. You wanted to be a brain surgeon. How cute. Aunt Sylvia's voice, laughter. Guess the brain part didn't work out, huh? Daniel's smirk. I shut it down, focusing on the rhythm of washing elbow to wrist, wrist to fingertips. Precise. Controlled. Every motion stripping away doubt. When I stepped into the OR, the team straightened. The air was electric machines, humming screens, glowing gloves snapping on. Chief in the room, someone announced. The patient was already positioned, head-stabilized monitors alive with color. All right, I said, pulling on my sterile gloves. We're performing a left-sided pterional craniotomy to access the ruptured aneurysm. Estimated blood loss under 500. Total procedure time, 4 hours. Let's save a life. Scalpel, said the scrub nurse. Scalpel, I repeated, and made the first incision. The first cut was always like breaking the surface of still water clean, deliberate, irreversible. Outside the glass wall, I could see Agent Morrison speaking quietly into his earpiece, shadowed figures moving in sync behind him. But all that faded as I entered the deeper focus, the narrow tunnel where nothing exists except the pulse of the brain beneath my hands. 3 hours passed. We managed to isolate the aneurysm's neck. Blood pressure was holding. I gave quick clipped orders. Clip. Irrigation. Suction. Hold retractor steady. At one point, Patel's hands shook slightly. Sorry, Chief. Pressure spike. Focus, I said evenly. Slow and steady. We're almost there. He swallowed hard, nodded, and adjusted the line. The operating room lights burned bright and merciless above us. Sweat gathered under my mask, trickled down my temple. Every sound was amplified, the heartbeat monitor, the ventilator, the soft rhythm of suction. Finally, I saw it, the fragile blister of the ruptured artery beating faintly like a candle flame trapped in glass. Clip, I said again. The scrub nurse placed the titanium aneurysm clip into my hand. I aligned it carefully across the vessel neck, steady, exact, no tremor allowed. The brain tolerates no hesitation. The moment stretched into eternity. Then, click. The bleeding stopped. Blood flow normal, Patel said, relief flooding his voice. Neuromonitoring stable, Dr. Martinez added. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Good. Begin closure. As the team worked to suture and seal, I peeled off my gloves, my fingers aching from the constant grip of precision. When I stepped out of the OR, the corridor lights hit me like a wave. Waiting there was Director Harrison, the hospital's executive director, beside a man in a tailored suit who radiated government. Dr. Lynn Harrison said quickly, "This is Deputy Chief of Staff Richardson." The man extended his hand. "Doctor, the President sends his personal gratitude. You've just saved one of his closest advisors." I shook his hand. "He'll need full neurological observation for 48 hours. We'll monitor for vasospasm and delayed ischemia." He blinked. "Of course. Whatever you need." "Thank you," I said, and turned back toward the surgical floor. I didn't need gratitude. I needed rest and silence. As I walked down the corridor, the adrenaline began to fade, leaving only exhaustion. I caught my reflection in the dark window, Scrub's mask line still pressed into my skin, eyes hollow from focus. This was who I was. Not the failure, not the embarrassment. Chief of Neurosurgery. And the world would know it before morning. By dawn, the entire city was awake. News vans were circling Metropolitan Hospital like vultures drawn by the scent of significance. They didn't know who the patient was yet, just that a senior government official had been rushed into emergency surgery under top-secret conditions. Inside, the world was quieter, still humming from the aftershock of what had just happened. The adrenaline was wearing off, and with it came the ache both in my hands and in the pit of my chest. I stripped off my gloves and leaned against the scrub room counter. The stainless steel sink reflected my pale face, eyes rimmed red with exhaustion. For a moment, I just stood there listening to the distant, steady beep of the heart monitor in OR1. That sound meant life. It meant we'd won this time. Dr. Martinez entered, pulling off her mask. Vitals are holding. Neuro readings are clear. No sign of vasospasm yet. I nodded. Good work. Keep him under observation for the next 48. Page me if ICP rises above 20. Yes, Chief. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. You just saved a man who runs the country's defense operations. That's huge. It's another patient, I said softly. Different name, same risk. But even as I said it, I knew tonight wasn't just another case. A code black, a Secret Service escort, a presidential advisor on my table, it wasn't routine. The story would leak. It always did. And when it did, the world that thought I was a nobody would finally see the truth. I walked toward the window at the end of the hall. The sky outside was turning pale gold. Snow had settled on the hospital courtyard, untouched and perfect. For a moment, I thought about my family, how they were probably still asleep, their living room littered with empty glasses and gossip. My mother would be fussing over breakfast, my brother bragging about some new real estate deal. They'd still think I was the girl who just answers phones. The thought didn't hurt anymore. It just felt hollow. Chief Dr. Patel's voice came from behind me. Director Harrison wants to see you. There's someone from the White House with him. I followed Patel to the administrative suite. Inside, Harrison was standing with a man I didn't recognize, clean-cut, composed, still wearing a Secret Service pin. Dr. Lynn Harrison said, his tone warm and professional, but his eyes were wide with awe. They wanted to thank you personally. The man stepped forward and extended his hand. Dr. Lynn, Deputy Chief of Staff Richardson. The president wanted me to convey his gratitude. You performed a miracle tonight. I performed a procedure, I corrected politely, shaking his hand. He smiled faintly. The president will be sending a formal letter of commendation. And, for what it's worth, he requested your name remain confidential for now. The press doesn't know who you are yet. That's fine, I said. Let's keep it that way for as long as possible. Harrison cleared his throat. Rita, this might put you and the hospital under a spotlight. Be prepared. You'll have media requests, interviews. I'm not interested in interviews, I interrupted. Just tell security to double the perimeter for the next 48 hours. Richardson nodded approvingly. A surgeon who values discretion. The president likes that. They both left soon after, their footsteps fading down the corridor. I stood alone for a long time, the quiet pressing in around me. That's when the adrenaline finally broke. I sank into one of the waiting room chairs and exhaled. The exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was everything, 6 years of silence, of letting them think I was nothing, compressed into this one night of revelation. My phone buzzed on the counter beside me. Dozens of notifications, messages, missed calls, alerts from medical journals already whispering about an extraordinary emergency procedure at Metropolitan. I ignored them all, scrolling down until I saw one name that made me pause. Mom. 3 missed calls, a voice message. I pressed play. Rita, it's your mother. Are you still at work? Daniel said. He saw something online about the hospital, some big emergency. I hope you're not caught up in that chaos. You know how you get when you're tired. Anyway, call me when you're done with whatever it is you're doing. And don't stay too late. You look so pale these days. I laughed quietly, though it wasn't funny. The tone was the same one she'd used my entire life, affection wrapped in disapproval. But tonight I didn't feel small under it. I didn't feel anything. A nurse approached me hesitantly. Chief, the press is starting to gather outside. Should I redirect them to communications? Yes, I said. No comment until I authorize. As she left, I looked down at my hands. The faint tremor had returned, not from nerves, but release. 5.5 hours in surgery. 1 life saved. Decades of pressure relieved, if only slightly. I flexed my fingers slowly. You did good, I whispered to myself. Now go home. By the time I stepped out of the hospital, the sun was just beginning to rise over the skyline. Reporters shouted questions from behind barricades, but I ignored them. The cold air stung my face sharp and clean. As I slid into my car, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, still in Scrub's eyes, tired but alive. For once, I didn't see disappointment. I saw someone who'd fought her way out of invisibility with nothing but precision, patience, and silence. And soon that silence would end. I made it home just before sunrise. The city was painted in soft blue light, the kind that makes everything look fragile and distant. My apartment felt unnaturally still, like the world was holding its breath. I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and sank into the couch. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I hadn't eaten in nearly 12 hours, but exhaustion overpowered hunger. My phone, which I had silenced during surgery, began to vibrate again, a low, relentless tremor. First came the notifications, then the headlines, then the avalanche. Breaking news. Government official survives emergency brain surgery at Metropolitan Hospital. Performed by Dr. Rita Lynn, youngest chief of neurosurgery in state history. A rising medical prodigy saves a life under presidential order. I stared at the screen. There it was, my name. My face, the same hospital portrait taken for an internal conference months ago, now plastered across national television. I wasn't invisible anymore. And suddenly my phone lit up like fireworks. 40 missed calls, 67 text messages, all from one group family. Mom, Dad, Daniel, Aunt Sylvia, Cousin Lila. For a long moment, I just watched the screen glow. I could almost hear their voices from last night echoing through my head, the laughter, the pity, the sharp-edged jokes about how I'd wasted my education. I scrolled through the texts one after another. Mom, Rita, call me now. Why is the news saying you're a doctor, Daniel? Wait, you're chief of neurosurgery. Are you serious? Aunt Sylvia, honey. There must be a mistake. They said you performed surgery. Dad, call us immediately. We need to talk about this. Lila. OMG. You're on CNN. Is that really you? I let the phone fall onto the couch cushion beside me. The irony was too sharp to process last night. I'd been their family disappointment. 12 hours later, I was a national headline. The phone started ringing again. Mom. For a few seconds, I just stared at her name glowing on the screen. Then I picked up. Hi, Mom. Her voice came shaky, bewildered. Rita, what is this? The news is saying you're some kind of surgeon, that you saved someone important. That can't be right. It's right, I said quietly. Silence. You said you worked at the hospital. I do. No, you said you answer phones. I sighed, leaning back against the couch. No, Mom. You said that. I just stopped correcting you. Her breath caught. Why would you do that? Because every time I tried to tell you what I really did, you made me feel small. You'd change the subject, or you'd laugh. Rita, that's not true. 6 years ago, I interrupted when I told you I'd been appointed chief of neurosurgery. You said it was just a fancy title, that Daniel's real estate deal that week was more impressive. You told me to stop chasing recognition and focus on finding a husband. There was a long, heavy pause. I don't remember saying that, she murmured. I do, I said, word for word. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with all the years between us, every condescending remark, every dismissal disguised as advice. Rita, she said finally, her tone trembling, we didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected softly. You wanted to believe I'd failed, because that fit better with your story. You needed Daniel to be the shining one, the example, and me to be the cautionary tale. Her voice cracked. That's not fair. Neither was pretending I didn't exist unless it was to make someone else look better. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly, controlling the edge in my tone. I didn't want revenge. I wanted her to understand. Mom, I continued, I've spent years saving people who will never remember my name. I've held a stranger's brain in my hands while his family waited outside praying. I've done things that terrify me, and you were embarrassed to tell people what I did because it didn't sound impressive enough. She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was soft, almost childlike. We love you, Rita. We just didn't understand. I swallowed hard. Love without respect isn't love, Mom. It's just comfort. There was a sound on the other end, maybe a stifled sob, maybe just silence. Rita, please come home, she said. We'll talk. We'll make it right. I looked toward the window where morning light spilled across the floor like liquid gold. I'm tired, I said. We can talk another day. Before she could answer, I hung up. The phone buzzed again. Daniel this time. I ignored it. Then Dad. Then Aunt Sylvia. One after another, the calls came in like waves breaking against rock. I turned the phone off. The apartment went quiet again, save for the muffled sound of news anchors repeating my name. Dr. Rita Lynn, Chief of Neurosurgery, Hero of the Night. Words that had been invisible for 6 years now filled every screen in the country. And still the only people whose understanding I'd ever really wanted were the ones who refused to see me until the world told them they had to. I leaned back into the couch, closed my eyes, and finally let myself rest. Somewhere out there, my family was staring at their television, realizing just how wrong they'd been. And for once, I didn't need to explain a single thing. I woke to the sound of my door buzzer. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater and the city noise bleeding in through the windows. But the buzzing continued, sharp, insistent, impossible to ignore. I rubbed my eyes, still fogged from the 2 hours of restless sleep I'd managed after the longest night of my career. When I checked the clock, it was just past 9 in the morning. The intercom crackled. Dr. Lynn, there are visitors here to see you. My doorman's voice, polite, uncertain. Visitors, I asked, already dreading the answer. Yes, ma'am. They say they're your family. A pause. There's quite a few of them. Of course there were. I sighed, staring at my reflection in the black TV screen across the room. My hair was still tied up from surgery, my scrubs wrinkled. There was a faint red mark across my cheek where my surgical mask had pressed for hours. I didn't look like a hero. I looked like someone who hadn't had time to breathe. Send them up, I said finally. 5 minutes later, the elevator dinged and the chaos arrived. The door opened to reveal everyone. Mom, Dad, Daniel, his wife Vivian, Aunt Sylvia, Uncle Raymond, even Cousin Lila clutching a shopping bag like a peace offering. They stood clustered together in my doorway, faces a mixture of disbelief, guilt, and forced smiles. Wow, Daniel muttered, stepping in first. His voice carried that same nervous confidence I'd heard my entire life. So this is where you live. Not bad. Mom's eyes swept across the room. My bookshelves lined with neurosurgical journals, framed commendations, the glass award from the American Medical Association gleaming under the light. Rita, she whispered almost to herself, you never told us. I tried, I said evenly. You didn't want to listen. No one spoke for a moment. The silence between us felt heavier than anything I'd ever held in surgery. Dad finally cleared his throat. We, saw you on television. The president himself mentioned your name. They said you saved the chief of staff's life. I did my job, I replied. That's all. Mom looked at me, then really looked. For the first time in years, I saw no criticism in her eyes. Just confusion, regret, maybe even shame. Rita, she said softly, why didn't you tell us? Why let us believe you were? A receptionist, I finished for her. Because every time I tried to explain, you made me feel like nothing I said would matter. Because you'd already decided who I was. Aunt Sylvia shifted awkwardly, her voice brittle. We didn't mean to. Yes, you did. I said not harshly, but firmly. You wanted someone to look down on so you could feel taller. That's what our family does. Daniel frowned. That's not fair. No, I turned to him. Last night you told everyone I was wasting my education. You made jokes about how much I earn. You didn't even ask what I actually do. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. I didn't know, he muttered. That's the point, I said. None of you ever cared to. The room was silent again. Even the city outside seemed to hold still. Finally, Mom stepped forward. Her eyes were glistening. You're right, she said. We didn't listen. We should have. I should have. Her voice cracked. I was proud of your brother because he reminded me of your father. I wanted you to have an easier life. And when you didn't follow the path we understood, I convinced myself you'd failed. It was easier than admitting I didn't understand your world. I watched her hands twist together, trembling. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Mom, I said quietly, I never wanted you to understand medicine. I just wanted you to respect me. She nodded slowly, eyes wet. I'm sorry, Rita. Truly. Behind her, Daniel looked down. Guilt pulling at his features. I was an ass, he admitted. I shouldn't have said what I said. You worked your ass off, and I laughed at you. I'm sorry, too. The apology was clumsy, but it was real. And for the first time in years, I saw the brother I remembered from childhood, not the polished, arrogant man who'd replaced him. Aunt Sylvia cleared her throat. Well, she said, her voice shaking slightly, I suppose we owe you a thank you, and an apology. I almost laughed. I don't need your apologies. I just need honesty. They all nodded, some awkwardly, some tearfully. I needed you to be proud of me before you knew the title, I said quietly. Before the headlines. Before the cameras. Because real pride doesn't come from recognition. It comes from knowing someone's worth without needing proof. Mom stepped closer, her voice trembling. Can we start over? I hesitated. The part of me that had been silent for 6 years wanted to scream. Another part, smaller, quieter, just felt tired. Yes, I said finally. We can start, but not over. We start from here. Her shoulders relaxed as tears slipped down her face. I can live with that. As they slowly left, each one stopped at the door to say something. Daniel hugged me tightly. Aunt Sylvia whispered. She'd been wrong. Even Dad shook my hand like he was meeting me for the first time. When the door finally shut, the silence felt different, lighter. I leaned back against it, exhaling deeply. Maybe this was what healing sounded like, not grand gestures or perfect forgiveness, just the quiet recognition of truth after years of pretending. My phone buzzed again. A message from Dr. Martinez. Chief, the patient's awake. Full neurofunction. You did it. I smiled. No, I texted back. We did it. Then I set the phone down, closed my eyes, and let the quiet fill the room. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. 6 months later, I stood on the small stage at the front of the ballroom, the same hotel my family had rented for every reunion since I was a child. The chandelier above me threw gold light across the polished floors, and rows of familiar faces turned toward me with something I'd never felt from them before: attention. Mom had insisted I speak this year. Tell them about your work, she'd said, smoothing my hair like she used to before school. Tell them what it really means to do what you do. And now here I was facing 70 relatives again, the same number as that night 6 months ago. Only this time, the air didn't buzz with condescension or pity. It was quiet, expectant. Mom took the microphone first. Her voice shook a little. Everyone, please welcome our daughter, Dr. Rita Lynn, Chief of Neurosurgery at Metropolitan Hospital. The room erupted into applause. I smiled awkwardly at first. The sound was too loud, too sudden, like thunder after years of silence. But when I met her eyes, my mother's eyes, I saw something genuine there. Pride, maybe. Regret, definitely. But it was real. Thank you, I said, stepping forward. It's strange being up here. The last time I was surrounded by this many family members, I was trying to disappear into the wallpaper. Laughter rippled softly through the crowd, the warm kind, not the cruel kind, I continued. When I became a surgeon, people told me I'd have to learn how to keep my hands steady, my mind clear, my emotions out of the room. What they didn't tell me was that I'd also have to learn patience, not just for surgery, but for people, for how long it can take someone to really see you. A few heads nodded, even Aunt Sylvia's. The human brain is delicate, I said, glancing toward the projection screen showing a diagram behind me. It controls everything: memory, emotion, reason. If one vessel ruptures, it can destroy everything that makes us who we are. And sometimes families are like that too. You could hear the breath of the audience tighten. For years, I let silence fill the space between me and the people I loved, I said. I let assumptions become truth because it was easier than arguing. But silence doesn't heal misunderstandings, it feeds them. I paused, letting the words settle. We hurt each other when we stop asking questions, when we stop listening. I learned that the hard way. From the corner of my eye, I saw Mom take Dad's hand. Daniel was looking down, jaw tight. I stand here not because of the title before my name, but because of what I had to learn to get it. Discipline, failure, resilience, and forgiveness. A small, clear voice piped up from the front row, my youngest cousin, May, 8 years old. She looked up at me with wide eyes and asked Aunt Rita, "Can I be a brain surgeon like you when I grow up?" The room chuckled gently. I smiled and knelt to her level, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor. "You can be anything you want to be, May," I said, taking her tiny hand. "And when you get there, don't ever let anyone make you feel small, not even family." She nodded solemnly, as though I'd just sworn her into something sacred. When I stood again, the audience was silent, the good kind of silence, the kind that comes when people are thinking, not judging. I looked out at them, at my father's tired but softened expression, my mother's watery smile, my brother's guilt giving way to pride. It wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But it was real. I took a deep breath. My name is Rita Lynn, 31 years old. I'm a neurosurgeon, a daughter, a sister, and a woman who once believed she needed her family's approval to feel whole. I don't anymore. The words came out steady calm, but I'm grateful because without that silence, I might never have learned to hear my own voice. The applause started slowly, then built into something stronger, warmer. I smiled, not for the cameras, not for validation, but for the quiet sense of closure blooming in my chest. After the speech, Mom came up and hugged me. Her perfume was faint familiar. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "not just for what you do, but for who you are." I nodded. "Thank you. That's all I ever needed to hear." As the evening wound down, I slipped outside onto the balcony. The city lights stretched out endlessly below a map of possibilities. I could still hear laughter from inside, softer now, no longer cutting. For the first time, I didn't feel like the outsider at my own family's gathering. I felt seen. And as I stood under the glittering sky, I thought back to that night 6 months ago. The humiliation, the pager, the choice to walk away from their ignorance without anger. That moment had changed everything. Sometimes vindication doesn't come from grand revenge or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it's simply walking into the same room that once made you feel small and standing tall. I turned to go back inside, but not before glancing once more at the city beyond the glass. "My name is Rita Lynn, 31 years old," I murmured to myself, "and for the first time, I feel seen.